Hi, my name is Tamara, and you are watching Things Even a Monkey Should Know. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me again today. As you know, if you've watched some of my other videos, I am not a professional anything except artist, but I have learned there are a lot of things around the house and out in the yard and on the cars that I can do myself and usually save myself time, money, and aggravation. So hopefully you have saved those things now too. Today, we are going to be patching a small hole in sheetrock, and by small I mean 3 to 4 inches or even smaller. I have done quite a few of these already. Hopefully this is the last one, so I thought I'd bring you in on it, and I hope that you only have 1 or 2 to do also. Let's get started. Well, of course, we are going over the stuff that we're gonna need today first, because we always do that, right? Well, I'm gonna tell you up front, I've done a lot of small holes already and some not so small. And so I had all the stuff to do this and I used it up, because that's what happens whenever you're having to do a lot of repair work. And so I have this one last hole that whenever I was fixing something the other day, I accidentally knocked in the wall. And so that's what we're fixing. That being said, I'm telling you this because I cheated and I purchased a kit, because I'm just really hoping that this is the last hole that I have to fix for a while. Now, everything that's in this kit is stuff that I previously got, just albeit in larger quantities, because you do pay more for the convenience of having everything included in this one little kit. So unless you're only doing one hole, this is not, I would not recommend getting the kit. I would recommend buying the pieces individually, because you'll get greater quantities and you'll have a little more versatility in what you're doing. But I'm only doing, this hole is about that big today. So I just wanted to let you know that. That being said, let's go over what we're gonna need. First thing you're gonna need is a utility knife of some sort. You're gonna need a sanding sponge of some description. Now this is what came in the little kit. I actually find these kind to be kind of junky. So I bought another sanding sponge, which is a finished grade sanding sponge, which is what you'll need, which is 220 to 320 on the grit. You are going to need something, let's tell you this first. You're gonna need a piece of mesh to put over your hole. Now they come in multiple sizes. Mine is wee because the hole is small, but I believe you can get them up to like 10 or 12 inches. And the bigger that you, the bigger the hole is that you are patching, just remember that you probably want to get a metal reinforced mesh, because otherwise, you know, you don't have anything supporting it back there, so you want to make sure that you have something that's fairly strong. Now, you're going to need to have some kind of a spreader, and a plastic putty knife will do, a rubber, let's see, those things that you can buy to spread Bondo are great too. You're going to need some kind of sheetrock mud. Now in this case, I have this high strength small hole repair. They also sell other kinds of hole repairs, and plain old sheetrock mud is actually just fine. Now I'll tell you, I mean, it comes in all different sizes pre-mixed. You can also buy it in the powder, but I have had much better luck, because I thought the powder's way cheaper and you mix it up yourself, but I've actually had much better luck buying it pre-mixed, because there's usually some stuff mixed in that makes it more elastic, so it's much less prone to cracking as it dries, and it's not as messy to sand, actually. So if you cannot get this or do not want to get this, I would say just about any brand that is pre-mixed, you'll do fine with. Now, since we're going all the way through this process today, and by the way, it's not going to take that long. Mostly what you're going to be doing is waiting on things to dry, because the actual labor is pretty minimal. Yay for us! But you're going to need whatever the texture that your wall is, you're going to need that texture so that you don't have this smooth spot on your wall where you patched, right? Because we want it all to blend in. Now, you can buy texture in a can. You need to figure out what kind of texture you have on your wall. If you have orange peel, because there's like heavy orange peel, medium, and light. For me, I happen to know that my texture is made strictly by the paint roller. So I have these tiny little 3/8 inch nap paint rollers, which is exactly what's all over my walls. Yay me. So that's easy for me. I don't have the added step of having to use a spray-on texture. You may have to do that. That's something you'll have to figure out because everybody's walls are a little different, right? Now, you will need, that being said, you will still need something to apply your paint. So whether it is the thing that textures and paints at the same time or whatever, and if it's a small area, you can use, you know, small roller, small texturizer. You're gonna need a tiny little roller tray or maybe a bigger one if you're doing a bigger space. And then you're gonna need to have whatever paint it is that is already on your wall so that you don't have a big white splotch. And of course, we always want to have a rag or some paper towels or something handy in the area just in case we have any spills. So you see this? This is our culprit right here. I punched this hole the other day whenever I was removing this old trim that I'm replacing, and I accidentally put my crowbar in the wrong place. So this is a pretty clean break, but this would be the time at which if you had any paper that was protruding, you would want to go ahead and cut that off. I have a little bit right there, and just push any excess stuff. You can pull it out if you want, it really doesn't matter. Just make sure that it is not going to get in the way of your patch that you are doing. You can also, if you just have like some raised areas, because sometimes whenever you get a hole punched in these, you get a little bit of a raised area out here. Take the rougher side of your sanding sponge, or you can take this little sanding sponge. These are both 220, I believe, and just give a little sand to the area, just so that you have everything as smooth as possible right in there where that hole is, because you don't want anything sticking up and getting in the way of your patch. Now, let's go ahead and just wipe off this area to make sure that it's clean. I think I've got it. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take our little patch, and these, whenever you buy them like this, they are self-adhesive, which is quite lovely. And I'm just gonna stick it with that whole square in the middle. And we wiped it down, recall, because we want to make sure that there's no dirt underneath this patch that causes it to not stick. So, you see how it's got a little give in the middle? I mean, that's going to get stiffer because we're going to cover it with our mud. That's why if you have a really large hole, you definitely want that metal reinforced mesh so that so that you have less give. So I'm going to go ahead and open my stuff here. And if you happen to have, I noticed with some of them, whenever I'd open them, they'd have like water or, I don't know, some kind of fluid up on top. This one doesn't. It's pretty well mixed already. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to not splatter it out like I just did. We're going to go ahead and apply an even layer on here. And if you don't have, see, I've got this luxury of having this area where if stuff falls, it doesn't matter, but you may want to put down a rag or paper towel or newspaper or something to capture any excess, because it is pretty easy for this excess to come off. And what we're doing, I don't have to do it all the way around, but you're wanting to make sure that you get a thick enough coat that you are covering this mesh, because we do not want to see a mesh pattern. And then as you go, you're going to feather it out to the wall beside it. And by feathering, I just mean basically drag it until it's thick here, and then it gets so thin that you almost can't see it. And we're going to do that the entire way around. So I've got this feathered out to a degree. I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do it again. Well, that first coat took about 45 minutes to dry. I'm going to remix my stuff because there's a little bit of water sitting there in the bottom. And let's be clear, I'm aware that these things say that you should be able to cover this with one coat. Well, I guess maybe you could, but I had a lot better luck doing multiple thin coats like what I'm showing you, as opposed to doing one big slathery coat. I had a lot less sanding to do at the end, which is why we're doing it this way, because I'm hoping to eliminate some of the trouble for you that I had. I believe we now have all of our mesh up here where it's going to show anyways, covered up. And I was just going through and making sure that I have as many of these hills knocked down so that everything is approximately the same level. Now obviously we're going to come back and sand, but I'm trying to make this as easy on myself as possible. So we're going to give this another 45 minutes and then we'll be back to check on it. Okay, our spackle or mud or whatever it is that you have and that I have is finally dry. So now we're going to sand this smooth and make sure that these edges that we feathered out just blend into the wall around this. Make sure that you don't sand so hard into it that you reach back down to that mesh, because then you'll have to do another layer of your mud and start over again. We're going to just do a gentle sanding. And if you have any peaks and valleys in here, obviously this is the time to take care of those also. Since this is fairly thin, you do not want to get really wild with your sanding. Now guys, do you see what I did right here? Now thankfully this is below the line where my trim is going to be, so it's not a big deal, but apparently I still didn't wait long enough. So this it was dry on top, but it was wet down underneath, so it kind of collapsed and there's a chunk out right there. This is just a good lesson to say, make sure that everything is super dry. So you may even want to wait longer than 45 minutes. Thankfully, that didn't happen anywhere that it's going to show on my patch area. I think we got all that though. So let's go ahead and wipe this down. Just wipe the dusty bits off. And since we were doing such a small area, we didn't have a lot of dust. Now, if you're doing a whole lot of these, or you're doing a larger area, you need to have a dust mask. I'm down here, down low. My space was fairly small, so I didn't generate a lot of dust, and what I did have just fell right into this crack right here. So I wasn't terribly worried about it. But again, if you are doing a lot, just go ahead and get yourself a dust mask or a bandana or a t-shirt over your mouth and nose or something, just so you don't breathe in a whole bunch of dust. We've now arrived at the time where if you have to put any texture on your wall to match the existing texture, you would go ahead and do that. In my case, all I have to do is use my little 3/8 inch nap ruler and go over what I just did. And keep in mind, since this came with primer in it, we don't actually have to prime that spot. If you buy some spackle or mud that does not have primer in it, you absolutely need to prime this area that you just patched, because otherwise that patch is just going to soak up your paint, and if your paint has any gloss at all, it's going to go dull. And eventually, yes, you would be able to get this to look like it should without primer, but it's going to take you a lot more paint and you're just better off using primer. But in this case, we don't need it because we have it already primed. So I'm just going to go ahead and go over it with my paint. And there's a little bit of junk in my paint. It's not helpful. And keep in mind that you may have to paint this twice. First coat of paint dry. Definitely going to need a second coat of paint, even if you have a basically white wall. And if you have a wall of some color that you are patching, you may even have to go in for a third coat of paint. I think 2 is probably going to do it for me. This is what I have really been looking forward to after fixing that hole. Beautiful! Okay, how how difficult wasn't that? I guess the most difficult part of that was just waiting for things to dry. Now, hopefully you did better than I did, because I actually had things lined up for myself to do so that I wouldn't bother that patch while it was drying. But I still went and stuck my finger right in the middle of it anyway one time because I thought it would be dry and it wasn't. And so then I had to fix it so that I could show y'all or finish showing y'all what to do. I was just really anxious to finish showing you. So hopefully you didn't do anything as silly as that and you left it alone for 45 minutes or an hour and a half, whatever it took for it to dry in your climate. Now, that being said, don't try to speed up the drying process by using, say, a heat gun or a hair dryer. This is a voice of experience. If you do that, there is a chance that you will make your patch crack, and then you're going to have to do more work to fix where it cracked. So just let it dry naturally and everything will be good. And easy. It was actually very easy, right? Well, I hope it helped you, and I hope that you saw that it is not a big deal to fix small holes in walls. Thank you so much for joining me again today. If you have not subscribed to the channel already, please go ahead and do that now, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.